Hey everyone, happy Thursday and welcome to the daily analysis for the 3rd of January 2013. It's about 3:30 Eastern Standard Time here, so we have about an hour to close for these daily bars that I'm going to be covering in most of the analysis today. Actually starting right here, as you can see, with the Euro Pound weekly chart, and you can see that because the weekly really shows that trend line nicely is why I'm paying attention to that. And so basically what I just want to be tracking is if we do get a continuation of this nice weekly uptrend on the Euro Pound. That's one of the main things that I'm going to be paying attention to as this week comes to a close, and then obviously early next week looking for a buy on the Euro Pound if we see some continuation to the upside. Okay, so that's something to leave you with just before we go into our news and terms, and we'll get back into that in just a minute. Alright guys, and so for news tomorrow we have a few red tagged events earlier, and then of course the major news announcement, which is the non-farm employment change at 8:30 a.m. like it always is on the first Friday of the month. So two things along with that. First of all, Tony, who is our fundamental expert, is working on an article as we speak, giving you some information on the non-farms. So the link to his article should be under this video. It may be a few minutes after the video is done, so you might need to refresh the page after you watch the video, and then all of a sudden it will be there. But make sure you check out that link and read more about the non-farms, because if you're trading, you obviously want to be aware of all of the necessary information on the non-farms. Number two is that we, and when I say we, I mean Casey, is hosting a webinar tomorrow, Friday, during the non-farms with another trader named Joe Atkins. So they're going to be co-hosting a webinar that, if you want the link to register for that, that will also be below this video. The registration is on their page, not our website, so don't be thrown off by that. It's still our webinar along with them. And that'll be going on tomorrow at 8 a.m. Eastern, starting at 8 a.m. Eastern, and that should be a really good webinar to look at the non-farms live with us. Okay, so that's what's going on in the news side of things. Let's go ahead and cover our terms real quick and then get back into the charts. Alright guys, in the terms, as you probably already know, just say that we're not licensed or registered to provide investment advice, and that the daily analysis is purely for educational purposes. Alright, if you need to pause this and read through those thoroughly so that you understand everything, please feel free to go ahead and pause the video and do that. And I'm going to go ahead and get back into our charts now. Alright guys, so again, we do have this Euro Pound weekly trend line that's in play, and again, that's one of the things that I'm really going to be paying attention to. We'll see, based obviously on what happens tomorrow, how this bar closes. But if we get a continuation of this tail, and it ends up being something that looks more like this bar, that's going to be a great sign looking for continuation of this bullishness. Now, the general slope of this upward channel is something like this. You can see that a few times it's went higher, obviously here and then again here. But for the most part, this is about the slope, which means that your targets are either going to be at the high, the previous high, which is a very common target, or if you're looking for a more aggressive target, it would be somewhere that corresponds with the slope of this uptrend. So that's kind of where the targets are typically going to be on a continuation setup, and that's what I'll be paying attention to. A very common way to approach a trend continuation setup, which I agree with, is to have a minimum target area where you're going to lock in, break even, maybe take partial profit. I'm not one who believes in taking partial profit, but I know that many people do and are profitable doing so. So you have an area like that, which is your initial lock-in area, and then you look for a trailing stop to get as much profit potential as you can. So three different ways there really that you can look to take profit on a trend continuation setup. All of that, of course, assuming that we do get the trend continuation setup in accordance with price action. And again, I'll make sure that we cover this Euro Pound chart tomorrow as the week closes to again go over this weekly chart and see how that looks. Okay. From this point on, I'm going to be covering the daily charts, but I just wanted to make sure I showed you that trend line there on the Euro Pound from the weekly point of view. Okay guys, we got some bearish continuation as well on the euro dollar. You can see that we were sitting on this zone. There was this channel that was forming here, and finally we got a great break to the downside on the euro dollar. So in my opinion, this is a great short move. Looks like we're at least going to get continuation into this trend line, but there's also of course the possibility of a break of the trend line and a continuation all the way down to our former support zone down here. So again, two potential targets there. I certainly wouldn't let it, if you take a short and you're in a profit, I certainly wouldn't let it sit here without locking in something, because then you're giving yourself a high probability that it's going to reverse toward higher highs, which is something that we want to avoid, obviously, and not give away profits. So those are two things to keep in mind. I certainly think that there's a lot of momentum showing up from this reversal pin bar and then continuation today, looking like the euro dollar is very bearish, and that's the daily chart again. Continuing the theme of massive bearish reversal and continuation, you can see the pound dollar also reversed quite heavily. Yesterday I was calling attention to this trend line, just saying, if you're thinking short, probably ought to wait for it to move through the trend line before you take a short. So any of you who did take a short on the break of that area are certainly in a lot of profit now, because that thing just took off. I'll give you a quick measurement on this. Today's bar is about 160 pips on the pound dollar in just one bar. So we moved all the way down. Now we're sitting right at the bottom here, which could be potential support, but really is not that heavy. The major support was here, which you can see it really crushed through. One thing to look out for could be a retest of that level before continuation, but I really think that this is a great move. And again, we do have this M pattern that is a definitely a potential pattern, so keep an eye on that. If you're not short yet, if you're looking to short but haven't shorted yet, one thing that you could definitely look for again is this retest. So for those of you, I for instance did not take a short. I know that a lot of people did take a short on the break, but I did not. So I would look for a retest of this level and continuation and look to get short a little bit later. Of course, there's definitely the potential that this thing could continue like a rocket, and people like me could miss out. But that's when you look at other pound crosses that could be taken short and kind of take your attention off the pound dollar, which is unfortunate because it's a great move right now. But again, it's about making sure that you get it at the right price for you. For me right now, it's already too low because of the massive move. For people who are trading the smaller time frames that got on the break, hopefully made huge amounts of money. But for me, it's now at a little bit low of a price, and I want to see a retest before I go ahead short. But simply just a great move, and hopefully this is a sign of the way the markets are going to move in 2013, because big moves like this always provide a lot of profit potential and are certainly worth looking forward to as a trader and trying to take advantage of. Another great potential setup is this odd dollar. As you can see, we had a great break, a retest, and now an inside bar that is looking for continuation. So this might be a really nice continuation setup. Now again, it is Thursday afternoon, so many people are not trading yet. I, for one, was not planning on trading until next week. I'm starting to rethink that, maybe taking some end of the week trades, because the market conditions are moving so nicely right now. So I need to reevaluate that plan. But you can see this is a great inside bar setup, and so a target in this range would seem to be a really high probability target. But obviously we don't want to count out the idea that it could move much lower. So it depends on what your trade management plan would be on that. But definitely a nice inside bar move on the odd, and you can see that the odd is showing weakness against the dollar. But the euro it really crashed against the odd, and it's pretty interesting to see the collaboration there. Let's move over to the euro odd and let me show you exactly how that looks. So this is the euro odd, and yesterday I mentioned that we could see a bounce off the 50 because it had some corresponding support, certainly all in here and here and here, a nice cluster of support. You can see that it broke right through that. It was like a joke for this euro odd cross, so we certainly did not get any type of bounce off that 50 fib level, and now we're back into this trend line. So the odd is starting to weaken to some extent, but compared to the euro weakness, obviously you can see the 3 bars in a row, a great burst of weakness. And so my point here is that that odd dollar with the inside bar showing some odd weakness, if that odd weakness really continued, the euro odd could get a continuation that would collaborate with this upward trend line, and we could see some continuation. So I wouldn't recommend necessarily taking an odd dollar short and a euro odd long. That would basically be doubling your risk because both of them would be Australian dollar shorts. But you can see the correlation certainly makes sense with the odd USD starting to head down and the euro coming right into an area of support. And so it'll be interesting to see if both of those are rejected. There's kind of double confirmation with the two signals, again, both showing odd weakness potential. And so if this were to break down and the odd dollar were to reverse and go right back up, that would be a double break of price action signal in the first example and a trend line area in the second example. And so, one of the things that you look for as a trader is certainly the collaboration or correlation of certain pairs, certain currencies across multiple pairs. And so for me, if I'm thinking about shorting the odd dollar because of the inside bar to the downside, and the euro odd is also coming right up to some support, looking to push it upward, to me that adds a degree of probability that the odd is in fact going to head down against the stronger US dollar. And so that, I like that correlation, I like that collaboration of the two charts, and so that's certainly another thing that adds to my bias that the odd dollar might very well be heading toward lower prices. Okay, so that's just an interesting note there. It's always worth taking a look at some of the other crosses that these currencies are involved with. The major crosses, I wouldn't be looking at the odd Mexican or peso or anything, but some of these majors, and see how they're correlating, because it could add some probability, or it could be a filter for you to get rid of a trade potential that you might be thinking about taking. Real briefly, I'll just cover the USD CAD because I don't think it has as great of movement as some of the other pairs, but you can see that it is starting to build a base on this very very shallow upward slope, and so another inside bar type formation that could come up and test one of these two major levels. So we'll see. To me, the USD CAD, this is a decent signal because it is an inside bar heading back up towards some major levels. But compared to some of the other trade possibilities out there, the USD CAD is not quite as appealing to me. If you're a big-time USD CAD trader and you look for USD CAD to come back to parity and always looking for signals back into the parity, you might very well like USD CAD a lot. So that's definitely worth noting. But for me, a lot of the other pairs show higher probability signals, just in my personal opinion and trading plan. Okay, and then lastly, I want to finish up with the pound odd, which is pretty similar to the euro odd, but obviously where the euro odd is more trending, the pound odd has turned sideways since about the end of August here. At this point, we've been relatively sideways, and so we've kind of developed this as a major base, and price is heading here. So where the euro odd could be looking to bounce, it looks like the pound odd has a little bit more to go before the bounce. So kind of an interesting paradigm there as well. And so that's another thing I'll be paying attention to. If the euro odd begins bouncing, but the pound odd continues heading down toward this 153 level, obviously that's going to say a lot more about the odd, or excuse me, it's going to say a lot less about the odd than it does about the euro and the pound, because the odd is the common denominator there. So if the euro odd starts heading up with any kind of momentum and the pound odd starts heading down, then you're going to want to really take a look at the euro pound and see what's happening there, because that means that the euro is really a lot stronger than the pound for them to go in inverse directions with the same secondary currency. Okay, so sorry, that was kind of a overcomplicated definition of that, but the point being that when you have a pound dollar and a euro dollar, or a pound odd and a euro odd, and they're going in opposite directions, that's really showing some diversion between the euro and the pound, which you typically don't see very much. And one of the reasons that euro pound is moving a lot right now is because of that. There's been times where the euro dollar is heading up and the pound dollar is heading down, and we don't see that very often. So when it does happen, it's really interesting to go ahead and take a look at that euro pound and look for some trade setups as well. Like for instance, because of that euro pound trend line that I just showed you, this past week the pound has actually been stronger for the first time in a little while, and so it may very well be close to reversing based on some of the other indicators in the market, like the fact that euro odd and euro dollar may be at support while pound dollar and pound odd are not at support. That shows you that the pound could continue weakening while the euro begins getting some strength. And obviously that's pretty theoretical, and you want to see some actual price action evidence of that, but it's just interesting to collaborate all of that information together and kind of take a look at it from that perspective. Okay, so that's the pound odd. That's what I'm going to close with today. Guys, I do hope the analysis was helpful to you, and I appreciate any comments and thoughts. And of course, if you retweet or share the analysis on Facebook, that also means a lot. So I'll talk to you soon. Thanks a bunch.